Hello and welcome back to the Red and White podcast. Today, joining me is the YouTuber Joel Gradwell, also known as JamSarny. Today, we're just going to go through the season so far. We were planning on previewing the Shrewsbury game, but for obvious reasons, that won't be necessary. Joel, thanks a lot for coming on. How are you, mate?
No problem, mate. Yeah, really good. And yourself?
Yeah, mate, I'm good. How have you been coping with the lockdown rules and such of recent?
It's not been so bad for me, to be honest with you, mate. I've been working all throughout it with my line of work, so nothing massive has changed. All it's done is really made me realise what a boring human being I am. You know, everyone else is missing the pub and going on holidays, and I don't really do that too much, apart from the pub, of course. But yeah, I'm just a boring person.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of COVID, obviously our match has been stopped now for I think is it 10 days? I think the academy's got to take off now or something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it seems like a daft question, but I'm going to ask you because I think some people would genuinely have something interesting to say. But is there a part of you that would have actually rather played these next three games?
Uh, I think in an ideal world, yes, but I think obviously health, safety comes first, and it always will do. The only thing that does frustrate me is that it's taken until now, and it didn't happen before the Wimbledon game. It feels like we've chucked a couple points away there, and it should have been done beforehand. But I know that the club did have issues with the EFL, and that they weren't particularly helpful. I think I've seen that they offered that we can postpone the game, but there was going to be some form of consequence or an investigation. But when we asked what kind of consequence or investigation, they were being really, really bland. So you kind of, it's a lose-lose either way. You look stupid and you look daft if you're going to play in the game because it's dangerous. But if you don't, you could be treading in hot water. Do you know what I mean? So the AFL didn't help. But it's the right decision not to play the next three games, in my opinion, 100%.
Yeah, I think from a health perspective, of course, if there's any risk at all of the rest of the squad transmitting the virus, then it's surely just common sense to cancel the games. And you would
Yeah.
think that as much as you can work in bubbles or whatever, that really if one player, and I think it's Maguire that they've said who's got it as well as a few other players has got it, you can't guarantee that the rest of the squad hasn't came in very close contact to them when they're training
Yeah.
and what have you. And even when the player matches. I mean, to take that side out of it, if we were to almost look at it entirely from a tactical perspective and remove the public health element out of it, I actually think, provided it was safe to do so, part of me actually looks back at the Wimbledon game and thinks it might have been a smart idea to play it. Of course, if you're to eradicate the safety concern, only because it will be another game to catch up on. And as much as I was saying the game should have never went ahead, do we want, more games as a backlog to catch up on? Just taking public health aside of it, would a part of you have preferred to just keep going? Or is it too important and we've got to make sure that whatever games we do play, we have our full squad ready?
Yeah, I definitely think, particularly with the squad we've got, we need to have, when possible, the best squad we can possibly put out. And of course, I'm someone who I hate it when there's international breaks and or that we have a couple of internationals going out and we postpone games just because we have one or two out. I think it really comes back to bite us in the arse, as it has done over the last couple of seasons, particularly the Jack Ross season that happened. We had 3 or 4 games in hand and we're only, a handful of points off the top, 2-3 points, and it looked all rosy, and everyone just thinks that those games we have the God-given right to pick up 3 points, and obviously we proved that wrong. But I hate having these games in hand. You look at Aki Stanley now; they have 2-3 games in hand, and they're still above us. It just happens. I think in this circumstance, I can't feel too sour towards the club for giving us and having those games in hand, given the situation.
Yeah. I mean, probably a smart decision in the long term, even if you were to take the health element out of it, because you do want to have your full squad available. It's just a part of us thinks that if Hull hadn't been part of those three games, who would have been it with Hull, Shrewsbury, and Accrington, wasn't it?
Blackpool.
Blackpool, that's it,
Blackpool.
yeah. If it hadn't been for Hull and probably Accrington in there, if it'd been three teams down the bottom, a part of me would have thought that maybe we just put the best squad out we can and hope for the best, because having those games to catch up on, as we know, we don't cope well with that as a squad. I mean, I go back to the first season that we were in League One, and we had 3 or 4 games around, and I think we screwed it up really with the last kind of 6 to 8 games of the season, with giving away late goals and losing games and drawing games in particular. But I just think it's an interesting thing to talk about, because actually, it might have even been better to just plough on and get the games done under our belt, to try and build a bit of momentum. I mean, is there any part of you that thinks we can use as an opportunity? I mean, if they'd been training, it would have been a different matter, but it might just give Lee Johnson a bit more time to get his thoughts together and maybe go back and watch a few old games, and in not in a practical sense, but in a theoretical sense, put pen to paper and start thinking, what ideas have I got for this team?
Yeah, well, I think even in a short amount of time he's been here, he's already identified certain aspects that he wants to improve, he wants to change. So yeah, I'm sure that is the way he will be able to use his time, this 10 days or minimum of 10 days. But like you say, they can't go on the training ground to put these ideas together. So I don't know how helpful it will be to him to be 10 days away from the squad. There's only so much he can do by himself. I'm sure they'll speak to each other just as we are over Zoom and stuff like that. But it'll be a good time for him to think about the squad. But that's all he's going to be able to do, think about the squad.
Yeah, so you can't actually put anything into place. But
no,
with them coming in so quickly and not having a lot of time since we've had so many games, him and his coaching staff might appreciate just that, to have those 10 days to just get their heads together and write down, get some ideas down and go back. And you can't put anything into practice, but it could be that actually he sees a really good idea and plans it out how we're going to train to achieve it. I mean, getting onto the season itself, obviously this is meant to be a kind of a review of the season so far, I guess, now that we're just over a third of the way through. I mean, obviously this season hasn't been brilliant so far, but I was looking back, and out of our first 6 games, the results couldn't have gone much better. I think if you exclude the Bristol Rovers game, the 1-1 draw, the only game we dropped points was 0-0 away at Charlton, but we absolutely battered them and we had a player sent off with about 20 minutes to go, and that entirely killed off our tactics. I mean, was it a really good start of the season? Were you thinking we're going to just keep playing like this and keep smashing it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a brilliant start to the season, particularly defensively, because I don't think we conceded for the first sort of 4 or 5 games, did we?
And excluding the Bristol Rovers game, we didn't score until the Portsmouth game, so we went six clean sheets in a row,
Yeah, and like you said, I think every game that we didn't win, or we didn't manage to get 3 points, we deserved to win. Like the Charlton game, as you say, we absolutely dominated. The one game where I think we were quite fortunate was the Peterborough game, where was that 1-0 too? No, it was 1-0, wasn't it?
It was 1-0. Ledbetter got a penalty,
Yeah. So, I thought it was really promising. But then as the games went on, you could see teams figured us out. And we were so easy to figure out because we'd set up in such a way that, the wing-back system, if played correctly, it can be brilliant. And that's what we saw for the first very small portion of the season. But Parky only had one way of playing it, sticking to the wings and the wings only. And once that plan A is figured out by teams, it is so easy to deal with. All they need to do is crowd their own box, get bodies in their own box. And it's literally like a training drill half the time. We're just constantly pumping aimless balls into the box and it doesn't work. If we can shift it into the middle and do something there, but we weren't doing that and we got figured out, unfortunately. I think if we did have a plan B, it could have looked a lot different for Parky, but it became very samey. His substitutes were poor, as we know, and tactically he got figured out and hilariously easy at times.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that was my main critique of those first I would probably say first 10 games really was, well, I mean, right up until the point he got sacked, which was like, even when we're playing well, was teams, even when we're winning games, teams were figuring us out. We were just kind of getting lucky. We never had any alternative option where it was to, go through the middle or utilise that one player who's just a little bit different. I think the lack of McGeady really didn't help. If we'd had him in the team, then all of a sudden, instead of constantly looking to go out wide and cross it in, you then got that option of you've got him there and he's in an attacking outlet, and you can rely on him to create you a chance when things aren't going wrong. I mean, with Phil Parkinson there, I would presume as with everyone, it got to the point where you said enough's enough. I mean,
Yeah.
even I did in the end, and I defended him, till the cows came home. But what was
I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah.
I thought there was something wrong with you.
As I think a lot of people did. I mean, what was the turning point for you?
The final point for Parky.
Yeah, before you were like, this enough's enough. He's got to go.
I was very up and down with the man, and you can call it fickle, or you can just call it supporting the club when we're doing well. But when he first come in, he definitely wasn't my first choice.
Agreed. Yeah,
not my choice. It definitely wasn't. He was easily
Agreed.
6th, 7th, 8th down the line.
Yeah,
but of course you support him. We didn't see an immediate reaction for Parky, which you don't always get with managers. But it started to get worse than Jack Ross originally. Yeah, he went through a decent run and you think, okay, maybe he's getting something good here. And then it's just the inconsistencies. He comes up with one plan and he drills it and he does not leave that one plan alone. But this season, I think it was after the sort of first 5-6 games, after that decent run, then I could see from a mile off, as could a lot of fans, the direction we were going in. Like I say, plan A and plan A only. And I think he'd lost the players come the end of his time with us as well. You could see that, because there were times where it was just literally the player quality, and I don't think we have the best squad in the league. I don't, but at times it was the player quality that was saving his skin, that we do have within the squad. We could go into half time, a goal to the good, and we're looking all right, but then the players are coming out second half and they look defeated. Do you know what I mean? So is that a team talk? Is it? Or is it something tactically has changed? Is he telling them to sit back? But they looked a shadow of themselves when they come out for the second half. So I don't know what Parker tells them, but it obviously wasn't working out.
Yeah, I mean, it was a game in particular that stood out when you thought, right, I'm now 100% confident he's got to go. Because for me, that really wasn't until the Fleetwood game.
Fleetwood was a really bad one. There was a handful of frustrating ones, but for me, I think even from the off at the beginning of the season, I always felt very sort of skeptical of him, even when we were doing well, which might sound bad. I obviously supported him. I wanted him to do well, but I could see the cracks, and every positive result for me was papering over the cracks. Because there were massive aspects, even within games where we coming away with 3 points. You can see that it was just that papering over the cracks, and people just forgetting about it because we were winning. And you can go through games where you play poorly and you win, and people say that's the sign of champions, but it doesn't always last. And it got to the point
when it's game after game after game after game, then that argument of that's the sign of champions goes out the window. If it's one in every 5 to 6 games, then it's a fair point. But
yeah, no, 100%, mate, and that's what I say. I was saying that so often in the season, even when we were doing well, it was merely papering over the cracks. It was only a matter of time. And it got to the point where people only saw the cracks and there was no papering to be done.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, as you say, people do say it's the sign of champions and what have you, but when it's game after game after game that you're getting away with it, it's no longer the sign of champions, and you just aren't good enough as a team. My main defense of Parkinson was who comes into this team and seriously improves it. And I personally thought we had a problem with the squad more than a problem with the manager. I look back at the start of the season and I think if we'd maybe just signed a few out of the following names, Ben Hennigan, Nangelay, Garbutt, Fraser, Madison, Parkinson would have then had the option to really change it. And I personally didn't really see what else he could have done with the squad. And I kind of thought, well, last season things were going awfully, but then something clicked all of a sudden. What's to say that won't happen again? But looking back now, and hindsight is a wonderful thing. I think with what Lee Johnson's done already, and with how we seem to have actually improved as a squad already, and kind of going in a new direction already, I kind of look back on it now and think, I was probably Parkinson for a little bit for a little bit too long, really. I mean, one thing you said there, and I had to make a note of it to remind myself. You mentioned there about the players looking deflated when they came out in the second half. One thing Lee Johnson, I think, said in one of his press conferences, he said it's concerning about the lack of big personalities in here. I'm not entirely sure, but it was something along those lines. I think he said at might have been his very first game. Do you think that Parkinson might have just destroyed any big personalities we had in the squad? When you look at his handling of McGeady, I can't imagine that anyone in the squad who was even a character getting along with him. Maybe I look back and think, well, was he trying to be a bit too authoritative and not letting players just express themselves and go off their volition a bit?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and I'm glad you mentioned McGeady because that's where I was going to go. And I think the whole McGeady situation in the first place, I personally, and of course it's only hearsay and what have you, but I personally think that McGeady, because he is a character, he's got a mouth on him, and he's got a personality.
We can see
it. But his experience, he's been there, he's done that. As much as people may or may not rate him, he is a good player, and you can hear in every interview he's ever had, he has been right. Even if he said that this isn't good enough, that isn't good enough, he has been right. And I've seen him in podcasts, which of course don't always tell both sides of the story, but in podcasts, he hasn't spoke about someone highly enough. Do you know what I mean? And I think that there was a story where he came in, where I think we were drawing with Aki Stanley or something, and at half time, and he come in and basically just said, you know, if you can't beat these lot, then you're not going to make it. And I think Parky will have seen that and thought, no, I want to be the one and only figure here. You know, I don't need another mouthpiece. Right, you get out. All he wanted was a group of lapdogs, and that's all he wanted. You know, he wanted everyone to listen to me and me only. I'm the only voice you need to listen to. And that might just be it. But you need a dressing room full of characters, not necessarily just having a laugh and this, that, and the other, even though that is nice. But you need players that want each other to do better and drive each other to do better and get in the face if they have to. You know, and that's what drives a successful football club. There's no point in having 11 pussies sat on the bench, do you know what I mean? And just looking each other in the face going, oh, no, I feel sorry for myself. Let's listen to Parky, see what he has to say. It's not going to work. You'll never create a successful team like that. So big characters are definitely needed, and McGeady is a welcome addition back to that dressing room.
Yeah, I think that you're right when you say, like, but the Accrington Stanley game, what apparently happened was Aidan McGeady came back in and said, if you're letting the fans get in your back because you're getting beat 2-0 to Accrington Stanley at home in a stadium like this, put you off and nerve you as much as it did, then you're never going to make it at a higher level. I've been at a higher level. I probably won't get at a higher level than I am right now, but some of you lads want to go up to a higher level. He said it quite simply put you aren't going to do it if you're letting yourselves go. It was Lewis Morgan, that little brat, who decided to tell the story, I can't stand him, mate. He's playing his football in America or something like that. Just shut up and get on with it, mate. Like, you played for us for 6 months. You're like, you know, just be quiet and get on with it. You weren't even that good for us. Do you know what I mean?
I know. I know.
He was a decent player. He was a half decent addition to the squad. Maybe could have been utilised a bit better, but he was never anything. He wasn't a world beater. No. But yeah, I just think that maybe Parkinson had this attitude of like, I'm the kingpin. And he wanted a bunch of lapdogs, people to listen as opposed to people to challenge and step up. And you know, and that can go onto the pitch where players are frightened to beat a player or put a cross in, or players are even frightened to go over and speak to a teammate because it's all supposed to be coming from him. And you've got to be as a manager to trust your players to an extent and actually get the most out of every player individually. And sometimes that's coming across as an authoritative person and telling them what to do. And sometimes that's holding back and letting them express themselves a little bit more, and then just stepping in when they're overstepping the mark a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you say, I think you wanted it to be a one-man sort of parade and him leading it. Of course, this is only speculation, but he is very old school, isn't he? And maybe he thought, you know, given that he is quite old school, he thought that he might be giving up a bit too much control, or players are gaining a bit too much control in the modern football. So if they're opening their mouths too much, it's kind of overshadowing what he's doing. So yeah, but that is the wrong way to look at it, because if you look at some of the most successful teams, say you just spring to mind is the sort of 2000-1999 Manchester United side. The characters they had in that team, you know, like Keano, Beckham, Neville, Scholes, they had loads, Giggs, loads, hundreds of characters within that squad.
Your local team then, won it?
My local team.
Be one of them.
I don't think so, mate. No, but they had, obviously, what I'm saying, obviously, the example, it's a team full of characters who would drive each other on, they batter each other, and we've seen millions of clips of Keano saying how he used to batter the team, and, you know, and Fergie can deal with it. I'm sure fucking Parky can. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, you make a fair point. I mean, they went on to win the treble, and they had characters like Roy Keane, Gary Neville, even Phil Neville, Scholes. You know, you make a fair point, and you say even the likes of Beckham and Giggs, you know, quite big personalities. And you know, clearly you can be successful. I don't know if it's an arrogance and an ego problem. I don't know if it's maybe just he thought it was the most practical solution. Well, I think Parkinson another thing was as well was his press conferences, and this is a conversation that's been done to death, but he never, to me, seemed to take responsibility. I already see it in Lee Johnson when we win 4-0 and he's talking about ways to improve against one of the best teams in the league. You know, that very first game, those first few games when he's already saying, you know, that he's taking responsibility for the team. I actually went back and watched one of his press conference of when we drew 3-3 against them after they were 3-0 at half time. Yeah. What a game that was, by the way. One of the only positive Sunderland memories I've got, I think, was being there when that third goal went in. But he took responsibility for that, and he was absolutely gutted about the result, and he didn't once shirk responsibility. In fact, to me, he seemed to take all responsibility off the players and put it on himself. Say, I shouldn't have made this sub, I shouldn't have made this sub, I should have put this extra player in midfield. Whereas you would never get that from Parkinson. You'd probably say, oh, we still moved the ball well, and you know, or they came onto us, and he would probably find any excuse in the world to shirk responsibility.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And I was always going to end up coming on to this regarding Parky. Like, I can't remember exactly what game it was. It was when Dobson had an absolute nightmare a good few weeks ago now. But I can't remember what the result was. Either way, we didn't win, as expected. We didn't win. If you can remember, it was one of the games. I might have to look at the fixtures here. But Dobson, he couldn't place one pass throughout the entire game, and he ended up getting brought off, and everyone on social media was going mad about him. It was bad. It was that bad, and he got dropped.
Was it Rochdale? Yeah.
Was it Rochdale?
Yeah. And he said one of the main positives of the game was that we moved the ball. No, I mean, yeah, it was Rochdale.
He called it a mass. He said, although it wasn't a great performance or whatever, he said there was a masterclass in passing in the second half, and it was the worst passing I'd ever seen.
I think people forget to add Max Power in that as well. You know, as anyone who watched.
Oh yeah, both of them. But Dobson was absolute garbage. Hold on, let me just say. Hold on.
As anyone who listens to
2-2, the 2-2 game, wasn't it? Yeah, it was 2-2. But yeah, the passing was horrendous. Absolutely shocking.
Yeah, I was about to say, as anyone who listens,
he will never say what actually happened. And I like a manager to be real, whether things are going badly or if they're going well. I'd like a manager to say it. You know, they think we're stupid. They think we can't watch the game. I know we're at home, but we can still watch the game. And it's like he's trying to lie to himself. You know, like after that 2-2 draw against fucking Rochdale, you know, one of the worst teams we'll ever play. And then he's coming out with, you know, yeah, maybe it weren't exactly what we wanted, but it was a masterclass in passing. Give over. Do you know what I mean? Not a chance. And he's just saying everything he wants us to believe. It was as if he was trying to manipulate fans into believing what clearly wasn't on the pitch.
Yeah, like we can watch the game. I mean, as anyone who listens to this regularly enough, will know I am the founder and one of the only members of the George Dobson Defence League. I actually think he's quite criminally underrated.
One of the worst players
underrated by. I think he's quite criminally underrated by a lot of Sunderland fans. I mean, I can see from your reaction there that clearly you don't hold him in high regard. Do you not think that he sometimes gets a bit of a bad rap from fans, and that actually, provided you play him in a certain way, you can actually get something out of him? I mean, what I always say is that offensively, he's going to offer you nothing. He's got no creativity. He's not the calmest on the ball, and he's never going to distribute it effectively. But defensively, he's got a lot of energy. He's relatively quick, and he seems to put some decent tackles in and often cuts passing lines quite well. And if you have players next to him who can distribute the ball or create something or move it forward, I think you can get something out of George Dobson. Is that not something you see in him, or did you think he's completely pointless playing him?
No, I appreciate your positivity, but no, I've lost it with him. And I was someone who defended him for quite some time. You know, he come up from what Walsall, he was a young lad, captain there, and there was bits and spits and spurts where I saw something in him, but I think I was just lying to myself and try to think the best of Dobson. But now, when I do take a step back and watch him defensively, you know, he isn't as good as what you think. You know, he does have a bit of pace. He has lots of energy. But his positional awareness is horrible. His use of the ball is horrible.
Yeah, I admit that on the ball he's not the best.
No,
I admit that on the ball he's ineffective.
I don't even mean his passing, which is piss poor. But like the other night, when we were playing, granted it was under different circumstances and everything, but he kept doing this thing where he'd bolt deep from midfield. It's as if he had a plan, as if you're going to nick the ball off our defenders and go and do something.
I did say it, yeah.
He'd sprint back, give it back to the defender, and then he'd run away. But it wasn't even an effective run off the ball. It wasn't a quick 1-2 as you get taught when you were a kid. He'd just run to go and get marked, and then he'd stand still. but he just kept doing it. It was like watching a child play. I really don't rate the lad, mate. I really don't. I don't rate him at all.
I don't get us wrong, I don't think he's one of the best players in the squad. I just think he gets a really bad rap from fans. And since day one, I think Sunderland fans in particular have always pinpointed his mistakes very well, but never really gave him never gave him much appreciation for what he can do. And I think what he can do is offer you a lot of energy deep. As I say, I think he wins the ball back quite well, and he cuts passing lines quite well. I would like to see his possession of like his stats of like possession, recovering possession and things. Would he be on one of the first teams in the team sheet? Definitely not. Would he even get me start 11 every week? Definitely not. But I think in certain games, and if you put certain players around him, I do think you will get the best out of him. I think the best out of him is a player that's going to win you the ball back quite a lot and put a lot of pressure on when the other team's coming onto you. Like I say, he's never in a million years going to go forward and create anything. And I think he needs to know his limits. My argument for a lot of this season, up until the last few games, has been compared to Max Power. And to me, up until recently, Max Power hasn't offered us anything.
I agree.
That's both offensively and defensively. Yeah, I seem to think, well, at least with Dobson, he's going to offer you something defensively. I think when I look back at Max Power, a lot of games this season, I see a player who tends to hide a little bit going forward and defensively. And never say, going forward, he never really made himself an option and wanted to be forward thinking. And defensively, he was never there to cut it out. Whereas I was thought, at least with Dobson, he will be back there to defend and do a job if things don't go brilliantly. But I think I'm starting to see that Max Power was maybe a bit wasted under Phil Parkinson. I've made this point a few times now, so I'm going to try and make it brief. But I think Parkinson saw him purely as a player who can sit back and just recycle possession. But when you give him a little bit of freedom and you say do as you want and go forward, which is what Lee Johnson's almost doing, he's kind of took the reins off him a little bit. That's when you're going to see the best out of him. Is that something you see a Max Power now where I mean you were saying you agree, where do you now think he can go forward and offer us something now he's had the reins set off him?
Yeah, I would hope so, because I said when we first signed him, I thought he was one of our best signings, because for the first few games, he was brilliant. He was tenacious, he was aggressive, he was getting back, making challenges, he was taking it forward. We take the mick and say he's a sort of like beta version of Stevie G, but or at least we did. But then I think it's been restricted so heavily to a certain role where it's almost caging him. But I need to give some blame onto him, because he becomes a passenger so much, and he has been for 90% of his Sunderland career so far, should I say. And he's become someone who wanders around the pitch, pointing and screaming at everyone else, but making no effect on the pitch himself. And now I think Lee Johnson's basically said, break forward, do something with the ball, because there's no point in having Max Power and Ledbetter on the pitch at the same time if he's going to do, or at least try and do what Ledbetter does, but worse. Do you know what I mean? So so it has been frustrating. It got to the point a few weeks ago before Lee Johnson came in when I just said, I really wanted to get rid of Power. But I have also said it's frustrating, because I think he can potentially be our best central midfielder, but he hasn't shown it for almost the entire time he's been here. So there's only so much time you can give someone. So hopefully Lee Johnson can give him that freedom and let him off his lead a bit and let him go for it, because that's when he's going to be more dangerous. People see him as a holding midfielder, but if you look at his time with Wigan, back when Will Grigg was half decent,
like a free roaming type
definitely was free roaming, and he was getting into that final third and just behind the strikers, creating chances, scoring goals. And if I said that to someone now who didn't know Max Power previously, you'd think I'm having a laugh, because he hasn't shown any of that kind of ability. But yeah,
not since the first season, I think.
Yeah. So hopefully Lee Johnson can bring the best out of him.
Yeah, I mean, while we're on the topic of midfielders, I think it's a really controversial topic, because I always say we've got loads of centre midfielders, but just not a lot of quality. I think Grant Ledbetter has been our most consistent performer this season. I don't think there's a lot of people that can really argue with that. I think he dictates and controls the game really well. Of course, there was the statistic that came about recently about him. I think he's won the ball in opposition half more than any other player in our league. He passes the ball quite well, switches it quite well. Of course, we went on about Power and Dobson a bit. There's also Josh Scowen, who I think I cannot see why he's still in the team. To me, the set pieces thing was driving us insane. I'm so happy he's been taken off set pieces. I couldn't see why. I couldn't see why we persisted with it. I also think with Scowen, he tends to go forward quite a lot, but he tends to get into the final third and just offer us nothing. His crosses tend to be wayward. His shots tend to go over the bar. He kind of, he's not particularly.
I prefer that though, mate. To be honest with you, I prefer that though with Scowen because his shots haven't been great, but he's shooting. Because at the end of the day, like you say, the midfielders we've got too many similar players. Ledbetter, Power, Dobson. You play them, and we're not even getting into the final third. With Scowen, he's got more energy than Dobson. He's got more energy than Power, than Ledbetter, and he'll break forward. He's got pace. He's got tenacity, and he does do that box-to-box midfield role well. And he can take us, and he can be that link between our third and their third. And he has been that. Granted, his end product hasn't been great, but we don't have any other midfielders that are doing that from the centre. So I'll have him in that team every day of the week. In fact, he'd be one of my first names on the team sheet.
That's really surprising because he would probably be one of my last ever names on the team sheet. As I say, like going forward, I don't see. I think he gives the ball away far too much. I know Dobson does that as well, but I think with Dobson, he's going to offer you a bit more defensively. Like while we're on this topic, it depends on how many numbers you want to go with, who else plays. But if everyone's fully fit, who gets in that midfield for you, and how does it look?
In midfield for me, I'd have if we're doing the three in the middle, I'd have Ledbetter sitting.
You can go with 4.
Yeah, I'll go with the sort of 4-3-3, and usually we have a sitter and then the 2 going forward. So I'll have Ledbetter sitting, and I'd probably have Scowen. And if it was up to me, I mean, Power has been looking a bit decent for sort of one game we've seen him play, so it's hard to say now. But I would have actually said Dan Neil. Because I've been desperate for him to play. Every time we've seen spits and spurts of him, he's looked head and shoulders above the likes of Power and Dobson as well. And I think having Ledbetter there, because he's so good in that holding role, the 2 just marginally in front of him, they can just break forward. I would say Embleton, but I prefer Embleton coming in off the wing. Maybe dropping a bit deeper, but I do prefer him coming off the wing. I think the other night was a bit harsh on him. I think he was getting a lot of unfair stick, Embleton, against Wimbledon, because he was only one great. I quite
like the idea of him being in like a free role. If you were to play kind of like a 4-4-1-1, is him as the one behind the striker, but with him to have free rein to do what he wants. Because I like him a little bit, not to the same level, of course, but a bit like De Bruyne, where he's just going to find those pockets of space, and especially out wide. And I think he's got a great long distance distribution of the ball. And I think you're going to see the most out of him when you say to him, like, quite simply, mate, do what it is you want. Find that pocket of space out wide, come inside if you want, as opposed to limiting him to you are the left centre midfielder, you are just behind the striker or whatever.
Yeah, no, of course. I think it's difficult to find Embleton's best place because he is so 2-footed and because he's been so stop and start with his career, with England, the under 19s or 18s, whichever one he played for. He was playing off the wings then. He was for our under 23s for as long as I can remember. He was playing central midfield. And he can dictate the midfield, but I think he's so much more effective in the final third, as you say. So, yeah, give him some kind of free roam role, maybe as a centre forward just behind the striker, or just the link between the centre midfield role and the striker. It'd be ideal there. But if he's anchored down like he was the other night against Wimbledon, when he was kind of, for the second half anyway, it was just him and Ledbetter in the middle, I don't think you see the best out of him. He was trying to bring it forward, try to create, but he's not a holding midfielder.
No, I think you've got to have players behind him there to support him and back him up, and then he can find space out wide, he can find space centrally, and he can do as he pleases and kind of work off what he can see ahead of him. I mean, for myself, with the midfield, I think you've got to have Grant Ledbetter in there. If he's fully fit, I can't see how he doesn't get in the team. Being our most consistent performer this season. As I say, I would never have Scowen in a million years if everyone's fully fit.
If you have Dobson, mate, I swear to God.
I wouldn't have Dobson if everyone's fully fit. I like the idea of Dan Neil. I really do. I liken him a little bit to Max Power. I think he's a similar type of player, but he's just got a bit more energy. Whereas I think Max Power.
I think he's technically better than Max Power personally. Technically, he is.
Yeah. As well, I think he offers us a little bit more energy as well. I think Max Power's a bit sluggish, a bit slow. As for the centre midfielder, maybe you go with Max Power. I would also like to see when he's back fully fit, Luke O'Nien giving a go in there. I mean, I was just going to get onto there to Conor McLaughlin. He's been okay at right back since nothing amazing, but he's done a job at right back since Lee Johnson's come in, and when we went back to a flat back four, and he's definitely no wing back, but I think he can do a job as a full back. I would like to see Luke O'Nien in there. I mean, to me, his best days for Sunderland have come in the few games he's played just off the striker. Don't get us wrong, I think he fits the role of a wing back quite well in terms of he's got the energy and the pace to get up and down. He can defend, he can go forward, he's got a mint cross on him, and he's a very physical player. But I think when you allow him to, almost in a similar way to Power, but a bit more offensively as opposed to in the midfield, allow him to get into the space that he wants to and link up with whoever he wants to, I think that's when you see the most out of Luke O'Nien. MK Dons at home was a game for me that stands out. Burnley away in the cup last season. There's a few more where he's went almost as a second striker, and I think that's when you see the most out of him. So for me, if everyone was fully fit, that's the three I'd like to go with. I mean, I do want to get on to Conor McLaughlin. I mean, how have you rated him since he's came in?
When you say came in, do you mean as his
this season? I should have clarified. Yeah.
No, it's because it was. It's a strange one, Conor McLaughlin, because when we first signed him and the first few games we saw him, he was easily the worst right back I'd ever seen in my life. He looked like he couldn't play football. But this season, even in pre-season when we'd seen him, I've been impressed with him. I have been impressed. Like you've said yourself, he's not putting 10 out of 10 performances in, but he does have this quite strange style where he's quite blasé in possession, and he's quite happy to bring it under control under pressure on the right hand side, and he's very blasé with just like when the opposition are coming at him, he'll just really calmly drag it around him, and everything's at a really slow pace and a casual pace, which can look brilliant if he manages to nick it past a striker, but sometimes it doesn't come off and he makes himself look like an idiot, and sometimes we need him to be a bit more sort of assertive and a bit more, just quicker with his movement in general.
Yeah, I think he slows the attack down a bit.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm not going to sit here and slate him, because I do think he's been decent. And when he does get up the other end of the pitch, some of his crosses have actually been very, very dangerous. We just have the likes of Will Grigg up top, which doesn't help.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, mate.
Yeah. I mean, another lad who can play right back, he played the other night at centre back, Deon Sanderson, the player who I've been screaming out to come in and just give him a chance, because personally I'm getting concerned that if he doesn't get game time come January, Wolves might recall him, because if he's not getting game time for our team, then he may as well go back to Wolves and play in their under 23s. I mean, to me, every time he's played, he seems to be comfortable on the ball a lot more than Conor McLaughlin. He's got a bit pace about him, quicker than Conor McLaughlin, and he seems to be able to defend a little bit as well. Are you at all concerned that Wolves might recall him and we can lose a quality player in him?
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned, and from what I have seen of him, I've really liked him as well. He hasn't put a foot wrong at all. He's very assertive in the air, very strong, very commanding, and I think him and Bailey Wright could actually make a very good partnership. I mean, in recent games, Bailey Wright hasn't been great, in my opinion, but he's still probably our best centre-back. But Deon Sanderson, he has that bit of youth and that rawness. He's so strong. He's not scared of bringing it forward. But like you say, there's no point in being here if we're not going to be starting him, because he should be technically starting week in, week out, even if it is his right back, because I do think he's better than Conor McLaughlin. But yeah, there is a genuine worry that he is going to get called back if we don't make the most of him.
Yeah, because Wolves, they'll say that and say, well, he's not getting any game time. Well, he can not get any game time for us. And as I say, I genuinely think he can offer us more than Conor McLaughlin, both defensively and offensively. It might just be a case of Lee Johnson wanting a little bit of time to work with him, being a bit inexperienced, to make sure he doesn't put him into the team and then he makes a mistake. Conor McLaughlin's a seasoned professional, really, where the chances of him making a serious error are significantly less than someone as young as Deon Sanderson. But I think if you want to play three centre midfielders, you need fullback. With Levitt sitting back, you need fullbacks who can go forward and support the attack. And to me, Conor McLaughlin just seems far too often. You see, he's blasé when he goes forward. To me, I would put it as he slows down the attack. We can be going forward with a bit of pace and tenacity, but the ball finds Conor McLaughlin, and he just seems to take the sting out of the game, and it lets the other team get back and get into position. And it, to be honest, it drives us up the wall. And I just think we're really limiting ourselves and limiting what it is we can do going forward, especially down the right hand side. You got players like Jack Diamond there who can. We're trying to utilise them and use them as a vice to get forward. He's been on the right recently. But then you have Conor McLaughlin there, and all of that work gets cancelled out because you have a player who just kind of slows it down, just takes that extra touch, just doesn't quite make that run. And it's not a criticism of Conor McLaughlin. I just don't think he's that type of player.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think the thing is, with Conor, like you say, when we are breaking forward, as soon as he gets his foot on the ball, it's going backwards, and it isn't going to progress the attack unless it's handed on a plate to him where he does manage to find a little bit of space and there's no opposition defender anywhere to be seen. Then he will start whipping balls into the box. But more often than not, like I say, he'll put the foot on the ball. There's runs being made in behind, but he's not seeing it. He'll bring it back and then back to the defence. So, yeah, if you want to play that wing play and that overlapping play, Conor McLaughlin, for me, is not your man if you want consistent attacks coming down the wings.
Definitely, mate. Like it depends on the system you want to play. I think if you want to sit back a bit more, and if you were playing 4-4-2 where there's not as much pressure for your fullbacks to get forward because you've got so many players in the midfield to do it, I think you can rely on at least one of your fullbacks just not really going forward much and kind of just being square peg in a square hole. You just kind of defend, and when you get the ball, you're just kind of knocking into someone else. But when you haven't got anyone out wide in the midfield as you do, and you have three centre midfielders, you need someone to get up there just to cover that gap and provide a bit of support to the attacker to allow the centre midfielders to be free. Especially if you want to play someone like Dan Neil or Elliot Embleton there, who are going to just want to roam around and find the right space for them.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, mate. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, since Lee Johnson's come in, obviously we've touched on a lot of things. One player he has brought in, I've just mentioned him there, Jack Diamond. I mean, just assess your thoughts on him so far. I think he's been brilliant himself, and I find it baffling how we haven't seen this from him. Yeah,
no, I absolutely agree, and I think again it's square pegs round holes, isn't it? Where we've been sticking Jack Diamond as a wing back, which is not
a round hole.
He's not. He's not a wing back. He never will be. It's another player that needs freedom. He's raw. He's young. You need to let the leash off these kind of players, and he shows what happens when the leash is taken away from him, particularly against Lincoln. I think it was brilliant, absolutely fantastic, and he's probably one of the only wingers that decided to go against the grain of not just taking it to the byline and putting balls in the box. Not to say that he can't cross the ball, but he will mix it up and he'll cut inside and drive at them, and he'll ask questions of him. And it's so frustrating when we are, particularly against a team that just have all backs against the wall and the park in the bus, not just to hoof balls into the box, because that's the easiest thing for the opposition to deal with. But he'll ask questions of him. He won't just go backwards or try and hoof a ball in. He'll ask questions, run at them, drive at them, and that's what really impresses me is his confidence and his bravery to do that. The one thing with Jack that does occasionally frustrate me, and it will get better with time, you would hope. It's a little bit like Gooch, where if he takes on one man, sometimes he wants to go back and do it again. And the others, I think it may have been against Wimbledon. Did he play against Wimbledon? He did, didn't he? He did play. Yeah, he did play.
Yes, yeah.
He did. I think he megged one of their players in the wing once, and then he tried it every single time he got the ball. Even if he'd already took it past him, he kind of trying to shimmy it back and just flick it back in between his legs. And then he'll lose it. And I'm thinking, why? You've done the meg once. It looks nice, mate. Keep going. But I think that will come with time. I think maybe his confidence got a little bit of the best of him there. But he definitely is a massive prospect, and I'm really excited to see how he does this season. He needs time, and I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah, I think you'll only get better with, as games go on and, certain things like that. I mean, I've seen a massive improvement since we've came down to League One in Lyndon Gooch. To me, he always was a player who was hesitant going forward. He still does a little bit now, but to me, when he was, when we came down to League One, that was probably Gooch's first season where he was one of the first names on the team sheet. Really, the Championship, he kind of made his way to the squad, but he was in and out. But since he came into League One, he's been a pretty important player. And I remember there was so many times in those first few games when he would get the ball out on the right-hand side, cut inside, sometimes beat a player or two, but then he would wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. And before you know it, the ball's been snatched off his feet, and he's had 2 or 3 seconds to take a shot, make a pass, put a cross in, commit another player, do something, but he didn't, and the ball ended up getting taken off his feet, and sometimes it would be a corner, or sometimes even be a goal kick, or sometimes they just get the ball back and would be defending a counter attack, you know. So players that will definitely learn with time, especially I think if you just expose them to that, into the nature of a first team, and you say to them, right, mate, it's your responsibility, go do it, you know. And I think that's something really key with Jack Diamond. If you give him the exposure, he'll only get better. I mean, to me, you know, when you were saying he'll just cut inside and commit the play, to me, it's a contingency plan. I almost say with Jack Diamond, where when things aren't working in terms of our tactically as a collective unit, we can quite simply just give the ball to Jack Diamond and let him do his thing. And as I say, it's that word contingency where, you know, he can offer something that no one in the team does. And I just think it's that raw, young, confident tenacity that you get in a young player like himself, where he is going to take risks. You know, if we're struggling to cross the ball in the box and get a header, he'll take it inside and run past the player. And I think it's something that we've really missed this season, us. And I thought McGeady would bring it. You know, I mean, you can't put too much responsibility on him straight away. It's going to take a while to get with the match fitness. But I see him quite similar to McGeady, where he's got the ability to just take around the player. He's got the pace as well to just take around a player and do something himself. I mean, he won us the penalty. He got the goal against Lincoln. I as well. I'm really excited about him going forward. I kind of believe for the life of us that the only time Phil Pottington actually thought to use him, when we could have really done like a player like him, because of how the contingency plan, how we didn't have a contingency plan, was at right wing back. You know, to me, I always say the type of player that he is, he's got intensity, he's got tenacity, he's young, he's quick. He doesn't want to be restricted when you're playing right wing back. You've got to keep wide, and you've got to be constantly checking your shoulder when you're going forward. Whereas if you say to him, you're a forward player, you're in a front three, he can do more or less as he pleases. And I just think it's similar Max Power. When you restrain him, you're never going to get the best out of him.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And like you mentioned with Parky, then it's absolutely criminal that Diamond was being used as a right wing back. And if you think that's probably one of the only place on the pitch would have got in, given the system that Parky was using, and I think that just shows the lack of trust that Parky had in any of the youth. You know how Diamond only got in as wing back, as you say. Neil hasn't got any game time at all. He's only been chucked in here and there with, you know, in a stuffed crust competition. And you know, other players as well, like younger Sanderson hasn't played at all. The younger actually really impressed me. I think it was Fleetwood.
Fleetwood was fantastic. Yeah, I've said it a few times. Yeah, it was brilliant.
It was a shame he went off injured, didn't he? It was a massive shame, because he actually looked very, very good. I think out of the youngsters that played on that day, strangely, he was the one I was most excited about come the end of it.
Yeah,
but there are a lot of youth, and I think it's good that we do have someone in Lee Johnson who is going to give opportunities to the youth. He said it himself. He's got a brilliant track record with bringing youth through. So, you know, there isn't really any excuse now for Neil not to push himself into the team, because that gateway will be open for him if he really is that good. So if he forces himself in, then, you know, so be it. He's probably the player I'm most excited for, Dan Neil. I rate him that highly.
Yes, him. I think he's got, to me, he's got a lot more energy. But as I said, I like him with Max Power, where I think Power's main attribute is his distribution of the ball, especially in his range of passing. I say that with Dan Neil, you know, he makes a lot of short passes, but he can also ping it long. I say that, I say that on both the players, but I think Dan Neil's got a bit more energy about him, maybe a bit more initiative as well. But as I say, was that maybe just Max Power being restricted? So I think time will tell on, is Dan Neil going to offer us more than Max Power, or was Max Power just not being quite utilised the most? It's quite clear going forward, we need a goal scorer, you know, just to switch the conversation ever so slightly. January window will be coming up relatively soon. If you could target three, no one specific, but three players, you know, who'd it be?
Well, I think, as Johnson said himself, we need pace desperately. We don't have it at all. The thing is, Diamond, although he's fast, he's not massively fast. I think it's just because we've got such a lack of pace. When he starts running, everyone's like, "Oh shit, we've got Usain Bolt in our squad." When we don't, he's got a little bit of pace about him, you know, because we haven't seen it. McGeady is well coming forward, but up top we definitely need strength and power. Like you said, Nangeli would have been ideal before the season started. He was one of my top targets. So, in fact, every player you mentioned earlier on was pretty much the whole video that I made. Every single player was bob on. Someone likened to Nangeli, maybe not, it doesn't have to be a big target man, but someone who's quickening behind, because sometimes we do resort to hoof it football, and you have to at times, as horrible as it is. So someone who can have that little bit of pace and initiative to get in behind, so then we have something for every occasion. If we need to stop pinging balls into the box, you've got Charlie White, who's now in form, thank God. And then, but sometimes, like I say, you need to resort to pumping balls away, pumping it over the top. Someone who can latch onto these balls in behind. So I don't really have anyone in particular in mind, because but we need pace across the front three, in my opinion. So I think that will be his main concern, because I think once that the attacking third is sorted, I think we have enough at the back, only just, and that'll sort itself out. We've seen that it can do. So if we sort that final third out, I think we'll be flying, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm just going to mention another player, a potential player who can fill that void for me, Cal Sterling. Like, he didn't really ever get a chance, I think, under Jack Ross. He was the loan player from, I think it was Tottenham. In our very first season, he didn't really get a chance, but when he did, he actually scored against Accrington Stanley. And to me, every time he got the ball, he was quick, he was forward thinking, he had plenty of confidence. To me, he's a player that springs to mind. I mean, God, there must be loads of players like him, in youth setups of Premier League and Championship clubs. I mean, even Antoine Semenyo, I know he's been playing quite a lot for Bristol City, so maybe that offer's not really there. But either of them, to me, if you can get either of them back, definitely do it, especially Cal Sterling.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Sterling a lot of times, and I was there at the Aki game when he did score, and he was quite dangerous. It was exactly, the goal he scored was exactly, as I mentioned, it was the ball into the box that he just happened to sneak in behind and pop in with the goal. But I think both Semenyo and Sterling, for me, the quick players, technically gifted, but they're so soft. They're so soft, and you get bullied, particularly
I think that comes
league.
with young, quick players, though. I think, when a player is young and quick in particular, I think you're gonna have to bite the bullet sometimes and just accept that. So that's the way that it is at times.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right, and that's the only way they're going to improve. But I just think with the physicality of this league, and there's certain things, Kaz isn't the biggest of players, neither was Semenyo. Semenyo, I actually did really like. Again, it's another player, and I think because we were in such a system and we had a manager that preferred sort of experience and such a slow method of play, they were never going to get a chance, in my opinion. But yeah, Sterling and Semenyo, you're probably right. I'm not too sure where they are now. Didn't Sterling go out on loan to someone in League One?
I actually think he might have done that. I haven't really been keeping up with him since he left us. I think Semenyo's made a few appearances for Bristol City this season. I don't know if he's playing every week, but I know he's definitely he's got himself into the team. I know a few times.
Right, but yeah, I mean those are all good shouts. But you look at the likes of, it was all the decent players, all the strikers that I wanted were signed at the beginning of the season, so obviously they're not going to move now. So it's difficult. Like I say, Nangeli was a big one.
Clark-Harris was one for me as well. I know he wouldn't have been available on a free, but I think he's fantastic.
Tyler Walker as well, who I know that it's probably a bit unrealistic in that one, but he was going out on loan here, there, and everywhere. So I thought maybe we'd be able to snatch him up. But other than that is definitely what we need. I think we need a winger, we need another striker, and maybe if we don't manage to find the sort of key in our midfield with that bit of pace and energy, which I do think we have, but it may not come off. So maybe an extra central midfielder and get rid of the likes of Dobson, who I know that you like. But
well, if there's a better option there, then why not? Like, I just think he doesn't quite get the credit he deserves from Sunderland fans.
No, I think you're just the head of the George Dobson fan club, so we're not allowed to say anything bad
about
it.
Defence League.
The Defence League, yeah.
But
yeah, we definitely need a striker and a winger, or maybe even two wingers. And I think that's what he's going to focus on, in my opinion. Johnson, hopefully that does come off.
Yeah, I think I agree with you when you say, a midfielder, especially someone who can go forward and offer us a bit something different to it. The other kind of three or four, well, Powell, Scout and Dobson, what the other four can. I think Fraser would have been fantastic. Just maybe someone who can also defend, but then it's got a bit pace and energy to get around. But then I also think could Luke O'Nien fill that void? I mean, he's got so much energy and he's got so much enthusiasm. I think, maybe the problem of centre midfield more lies in the squad. I mean, Dobson did get Walsall, I think, Player of the Year. Clearly, he's got something in him. Is there maybe just a way that we can work around it and get something out of him that we haven't quite seen under Parkinson, where he was just given one role to do, as opposed to trying to work around him? Because clearly he's got something. If he got player of the season at Walsall,
it's because Walsall, you would think, because they went down the season, he was like that. So
only just mine, I think.
Yeah, well, they had backs against the wall every single game. He had, he was dealing with attack after attack after attack. So he's putting his body on the line, and I don't doubt that he does that. But then when you've got a side who are very possession based, like us, that's when your flaws start to show. Because you can do as much as you want defensively, but if you can't bring anything else to your game, then you're going to get figured out. And you need a bit more than just being able to track back at this club, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying. As I say, I think it's certain games in certain midfields with certain tactics, I think he could really shine. To be honest, as I say, I think it's just about getting something out of him. I don't think he's this fantastic centre midfielder. Don't get us wrong. He wouldn't be, in my first 11 when we're fully fit. I just think Sunderland fans don't quite appreciate him enough, and maybe I sometimes go a bit overboard with defending him, but it's because I feel as if some fans just think he's the worst player we've ever had at this club, and actually I think he offers us. I wouldn't even say he's one of the worst players in the squad at the moment.
Okay, all right, well, that's your opinion.
Yeah. It's always an easy way out, isn't it? That's your opinion.
Yeah, of course. We'll end up back and forward all day because I'm never going to agree with you.
Yeah,
but don't get me wrong. I don't think he's the worst player in the world. Of course, I don't. I just think out of all the midfielders we've got, I just think Ledbetter's better, Power's better, Neil, Embleton, Scowen. I think they're all better, and I think he's bottom of the pack in my opinion. So
I would have him in. I would have him in above Scowen, but I would definitely give Embleton and Neil a chance ahead of him. But I think I would have him in ahead of Scowen because I just think I can't see what it is that Scowen does.
I don't know how you can say that. Right, okay, right. It's just your opinion. I just don't understand what you can say. Scout, like obviously Ledbetter sits in front of the defence. He does that, and then he just hands it to Scowen.
I wouldn't mind seeing Dobson doing what Ledbetter does. Holding back and trying to recover possession.
Right before, he was shocking. He was absolutely shocking. He falls over himself. He looks like he's uncomfortable running. Do you know what I mean? His running style, everyone has a different running style, but
it is a bit weird, I'll admit.
It's very strange. His face is basically scraped against the floor when he's running. But yeah, I just don't. I'm sorry, mate. I just don't see it. I just don't see what he's seeing.
It's fine. I mean, I've always fight losing battle with Dobson. I've had a few people come forward and say, actually, I think you make a fair point, but most people go, no, I've got no idea what you're going about.
Those are just accounts. Those are just your own accounts, aren't they? Your second.
Yeah.
More than Dobson.
Make an extra account to subscribe and just comment in. Oh, I think he's right about Dobson. Aye. Yeah. I think that about wraps it up, Joel. Thanks a lot for coming on.
No problem, mate. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no, it's been a good chat, and although we couldn't preview the game in the way we'd like to, it's still something, I guess, and we've had a good chat about the squad and that. Thanks to everyone for listening as well, and be sure to tune in to the next one. I'll see you later.